In today's session, we're going to continue on the implementation process for achieving breakthrough improvement. So at this point, we should have a capable and stable delivery system. We should have a continuous improvement culture in place and the management system to sustain it. Today's session, we're going to be talking about decision making. And so how do we make effective decisions and how do we make the decision making process repeatable and reproducible? And again, when we look at our decision-making process, we're going to tie that to our key performance indicators. So our key performance indicators are the driving force to monitor the progress of the company, but also if we have leading indicators, making sure we have the right things in place that are inducing people to make the right decisions that are aligned with our mission and vision statement and our value proposition and our strategy and tactics. So we'll talk a little bit more about this decision-making process. So what we want is that repeatable and reproducible decision-making process, which means that whoever's making that decision, giving the same inputs, would we all make the same decision? If we wouldn't make the same decision, then the process is not reproducible. So what we want to do is reduce that variability in the decision-making process. And what we need to do is build systems that allow people to make those decisions based on facts and data and reducing the reliance on intuition. If we are relying on intuition, then of course people have different intuition. We're going to get different outcomes or different decisions. And then ensuring that we have, given the same inputs, we would all make the same decision. And of course, achieving the same outputs. So when we look at the generic process IPO model, we have input, process, output. So the process of decision making here is in the middle. We need to make sure that we have the necessary and sufficient inputs to make those decisions and that the decision making process is standardized. Those inputs are many different things, but again, to have consistent outputs, we need consistent inputs and the process to be repeatable and reproducible. And in this decision-making process, of course, the data needs to be sufficient and relevant. So making sure we have the right data and it's relevant. And again, we can't have partial data. We can't have the wrong data. We got to have the complete data set to make the proper decision. And those, of course, need to be aligned with the vision and mission statement of the organization, not in conflict with other metrics. So this is extremely important that the metrics are not in conflict with one another. They're all aligned throughout the organization. And of course, it must be accurate. Right? If we don't have accurate data, we're going to have variability in our input and of course not get the consistent outputs. And also the people making decisions must have alignment in mindset. So a lot of the principles that we promote are counterintuitive. And if we don't have the similar mindset, of course, we're going to have different intuition, and that different intuition is going to lead to different decisions. Different decisions, different outcomes. And then we need a process to provide immediate feedback on the decision-making process so that if there is an incorrect decision made, we see it immediately and we can course correct as soon as possible. So when we're looking at decisions, another thing that we want to do is look at predicted effect. So if I make this decision, what do I expect the outcome to be? And that's the predicted effect. And so when action's taken, are we achieving the outcome that we expected to happen? And if not, we need to recalibrate. So if the predicted effect is not the expected outcome of the decision, then we need to do analysis and determine where was the wrong assumption that was made and then recalibrate for future decision making. So when we're making decisions, we need to look forward and say, okay, if I make this decision, I expect this outcome. If I get something different, then I have something in the current state that's not aligned with my decision making. And there's typically an assumption that we have. We need to identify what is that assumption and recalibrate. Also, when we're looking at decision making, giving that immediate feedback on our decision is extremely important. So what we want to do is look at the management window. So the management window is a time between when we take action from our decision until we understand the effect of that action. What we want to do is reduce that management window as short as possible. So if we look at a system, we have all these different process steps and we make it some decision at some point, and typically it might be weeks before we understand the outcome of that decision. And of course, that's too long, so our management window is extremely long between when we make the decision until we understand the outcome of that decision. So what we want to do is we want to shorten that time between when we make the decision and when we understand the outcome of that decision. That's our management window. Short as possible. So immediately feedback from the process once we make that decision, say, was that the correct decision? Did we get the predicted effect that we were looking for? If not, recalibrate and then take new actions or make new decisions, and then make that a standard process, and then train everybody and understanding how the decisions should be made and what effects we should be expecting from the system. So that's our session for today. Thanks for joining. Next week, we'll be talking about the next management piece that's required to achieve operational excellence and sustain operational excellence. And thanks for joining.